You are the Director General Ministry of Planning. What does this ministry do, or what is its importance to Somalilanders?
Ministry of Planning and National Development has four major core functions. The first one is development planning. We plan countries' development, and we determine countries' destination when it comes to development, and we develop countries' vision. We develop countries' national development plan, sectoral plans, and also other important plans to realize that vision. Another important function we do is when you plan, you have to implement the plans. And implementing that plan needs coordination. So we coordinate all development efforts going on in the country, and we also create the required partnership between the different stakeholders involved in the implementation of the plan, including both the local stakeholders as well as our international partners. The third core function is monitoring, to understand and clearly determine whether you are on the right track or not. You have to monitor the progress. So we monitor the progress, and finally we evaluate the progress. If we have achieved our targets or not, we have to evaluate, the implementation of our plans and determine whether we have achieved our targets or not. If we have not achieved our targets, then we have to ask ourselves why we didn't achieve. And if we achieved, our targets, we have to build on that and plan for the future. So, in summary, I can say this ministry is the ministry that really shapes the country's overall development and prepare the country to move forward.
In planning, you need some aid and you need some money. Do you look upon the aid of the international community, or do you do it with the taxes of Somalilanders?
I think the resources we receive as a country is from two major sources. One is domestic and the other one is international. So when it comes to the domestic resources, it is the Ministry of Finance who actually collects, the taxes, because the major domestic, the major source of the domestic revenue is tax, and that is the Ministry of Finance, the responsibility of the Ministry of Finance. The other major source of revenue is the external sources, and the external sources is, twofold. It is international aid and international investment. So when it comes to international investment, it is the Ministry of Investment that is dedicated to attract more investors to the country, so that we can increase country's production, so that we can, increase country's economic growth and create more jobs and more economic opportunities. Ministry of Planning creates partnership for the country. We coordinate and work with our international development partners, so that we can, make sure that we get the resources from our international development partners, so that we can finance our development needs. So it is the combination of different efforts of making sure that we have the resources to finance our, development initiatives and to actually achieve our targets. So Ministry of Planning is coordinating with other ministries who are mandated, to generate the resources and also, to work with us in achieving our targets. The international funding, when it comes to aid, it mainly comes from the developing countries. It mainly comes from the European Union. It comes from the United States. It comes from Canada. It also comes from other non-traditional donors like the Arabian countries or other Muslim countries. So it comes from many different countries.
Who owns Somaliland? Who really owns Somaliland? And how can people make savings through buying land and keeping it for long period without investment?
Constitutionally, it is the government that owns the land. But in practice, the reality might be different from that. As you know, Somaliland came from a long way. Somaliland is a post-conflict country. Somaliland used to be part of the Somali Republic back in 1991, starting from 1960 to 1991. The central government of the Somali Republic has collapsed, and that kind of union didn't work for Somalilanders. And Somalilanders decided, to withdraw from the union and, get their independence back. One certain country emerges from conflict. It is something usual that many things, will get wrong. So, as a result of the collapse of the central government, the result, that came up from there is that most of the land is in the hands of the public. And since most of the land is in the hands of the public, then there is, a conflict that arises from the land ownership, from actually given the fact that the title deeds and the records of who owns the land has also been lost as a result of the collapse. So that has been something that Somaliland was dealing with.
To cut it short, what you're saying is constitutionally that the land is owned by the government, but most of the land is owned by the people. Is that correct?
Literally, what you can say is, although constitutionally the government owns the land, the state owns the land, and there is a legal procedure that someone can actually own a certain plot of land as a list, for example, 99 years list, as you do in other countries. But practically, the government regulates the land, but land becomes a highly commercialized kind of resource, which is actually a challenge for the government itself to impact on development initiatives and attract foreign investment. So to solve that problem, the government is currently impacting on certain initiatives, including land policy. So there is a draft land policy. We are also planning, to develop the Land Management Act, which will translate, the land policy in a kind of, binding policy and regulatory framework. So there are initiatives government is currently doing to manage, the issue of land.
Now, when planning for land, the local government allocates part of the land, maybe for public use, for schools and all that. But in the end, you're still accused as local councillors that you sell this land that is allocated for public use. Why is it happening if you are really allocating all this land for public use? And then at the end, there's these cases where now, if you yourself at local government, now you are selling the same land.
The local government have a role when it comes to land management and land allocation. The central government has also a role. When it comes to urban planning, it is the Ministry of Land, Public Works and Housing, which has the bigger responsibility to devise master plans, which is actually mandated to a vision for and oversee the urbanization and the urban growth. Local governments have also a significant role, to implement the master plans. As I said earlier, the records of the title deeds and that stuff has been lost, in in the collapse from the collapse of the central government of Somalia. But it doesn't mean nothing has been done. Local governments have actually established a functioning system. There could be, corruption cases. There could be irregularities. There could be, mismanagement, and that is not something unique for Somaliland. You could find that elsewhere in the world.
So you are admitting that it's happening in that country. That's local government people are selling land. This land that is located for the public use is being sold to individual people. You are admitting that it's happening. And what are you trying to do to curb this?
Honestly, I cannot rule out that this case could happen. But what is important is what are we doing, to solve such kind of challenge. What we are doing is to prepare land policy, to actually develop and draft, land management act, to develop master plans for the local governments and for the urbanization of Somaliland. We are also actually reforming our judiciary and the justice system, so that rule of law is upheld. So there are many initiatives both the central government as well as the local government is doing. And in addition to what I said, local governments are also currently digitalizing the land management system, and they are using the technology like the GIS and and things like that, so that they can digitalize the land management kind of information, so that duplication of title deeds and that things could not happen.
I really need your input in this. You've seen a case where it has been happening some months ago, where you find the president's family was having issues with other people, the families, about the land dispute. People are trying to say the president is trying to take our land. Where are these things happening, and who creates this mess? Who brings out this mess?
As I said, land conflicts could happen, and they happen elsewhere in the world. What you have to know is the president's family could own a land. And if they own a land, there could be a conflict between the president's family and others, like happiness in other normal people. I cannot tell you the details, why this conflict arises and who is wrong and who is right. But what I can tell you is the president can own a land, the president's family can own a land, other people can own a land, and conflict could arise. So we shouldn't politicize the issue. It is a kind of civilian case which could be solved through the normal legal procedure. So I don't think it is something we should politicize, and we should make the president's family are making power abuse. They are not making power abuse. If the president owns a land and people try to grab his plot of land, the president has the right to defend, right? We cannot say it is the president and why he is defending himself, or why the family's president are defending themselves. That is their constitutional right.
Fair enough. Now, there's this case that I saw it happen, that people they go and collect money through charity. They go buy a big land for graves, a graveyard in Somaliland. Yet we have a country that can allocate a piece of land to be like a senate. Don't you feel that you're failing as a ministry? You're failing the people of Somaliland, that you're not providing this land?
Ministry of National Planning and Development is not actually mandated for physical planning. It is the Ministry of Public Works and Ministry of Land, Public Works and Housing, and the local government is who make actually the physical planning. But I can tell you just the bigger picture. As I have said, we have abundant land, and it is the role of the central government to plan, that abundant land, so that we can provide social services, so that we can respond to the needs, of the people, so that we can plan, to attract, foreign investment. There could be specific or certain, specific cases which you can take as an example when it comes to land dispute or access to land. As I told you earlier, land becomes, very commercialized, and it is mostly, in the hands of the public, and the government is doing initiatives to actually deal with the issue of land.
Okay, away from that directly. Urbanization is all about water, and water is something very important. And if you look at not only in Hargeisa but in the whole Somaliland, you have an issue with water. What are you doing to solve this?
Water actually is a challenge for Somaliland. Somaliland is semi-arid country geographically.
Yeah.
Apart from that, we actually receive significant amount of surface water annually. So although we are a semi-arid country, and the water we get is actually limited compared to other countries like Kenya, but that doesn't mean we cannot get enough water for our people. What we are currently doing is the government is actually investing, urban water systems. The government also is doing, to establish earth dams and mega dams in the urban and semi-urban areas. So one of the key challenges we have is we get significant amount of rainwater, but that rainwater drains into the sea. So we want to embark on soil and water conservation initiatives, including establishing mega dams and earth dams, so that we can actually stop that water draining into the sea. And that water draining into the sea is not only issue of water; it is also issue of environmental degradation. It is an issue of losing our fertile soil. So the government is actually doing efforts at this level best to to get potable water for its citizens, and also to protect or conserve the environment.
Last but not least, if you allow me, investment it's all about having good infrastructure. That is road and also electricity. Electricity is privately owned in Somalia. What are you doing as a government to try and build up the infrastructure, not only in Bariga, because it's now recognized as the best city in one of the growing and well-managed cities in Eastern Africa among the cities. What about Hargeisa? What about other cities?
As you said, infrastructure and energy are one of the key components of development of any nation. As you know, when it comes to infrastructure, there are ongoing efforts. The Berbera port extension is currently underway. The Berbera corridor is also now under construction. There are actually other efforts that the government is currently doing with the help of our development partners. If I give you an example, there is Somaliland Development Fund supported by our development partners, including UK, Netherlands, and Denmark. And that Somaliland Development Fund, one of the major priority areas that we are focusing on is, roads construction, the roads infrastructure, which is very, very important for countries' economic growth. So we have national roads or, national, feeder roads, and you also have roads in the city, within the cities. So when it comes to national roads, it is the Somaliland Roads Authority which has the responsibility and the Ministry of Transport and Roads Development. But when it comes to roads, in the cities, it is the municipalities, who have the responsibility to build.
For a very good example, in Hargeisa, the municipality of Hargeisa City has failed. You are saying it has failed under its mandate of building the roads. Are you saying that?
I'm not saying it has failed,
Because
but there are gaps. There are gaps, and these gaps, have to be addressed. And one of the key challenges we have in Hargeisa is roads infrastructure. And as you are familiar with, or as you know, roads infrastructure are expensive. It's not something easy that you can do overnight. So it is a resource issue. It is revenue mobilization issue. It is planning issue. So one of the key challenges we have is roads in Hargeisa. But I can assure you, that the Hargeisa municipality is doing some efforts, although there are gaps, and these gaps have to be addressed. The central government is aware of it. I cannot say Hargeisa municipality has failed, but I can tell you there are gaps, and these gaps should be addressed, both by the central government as well as the local government.
For how long will the people living in Hargeisa have to wait for these gaps to be addressed? Because it has taken a long time, to be very sincere.
I cannot defend Hargeisa municipality, and I cannot be on their behalf. We can ask, the details of Hargeisa roads and, Hargeisa issues, the mayor of Hargeisa, I mean. But what I can tell you is, there are ongoing efforts. I understand, that people are concerned about Hargeisa roads and Hargeisa social services, and it is not something I can defend. But what I can tell you is, as a central government, we are aware of it. The president is aware of it. The president has actually addressed this issue in many times, and the government is actually working on to address that gap. If I go back to your question on energy, energy for household consumption and energy for industrial use, both are very important for country's economic development. There are many renewable energy initiatives which are currently going on with the support of our international development partners. So there is energy master plan under preparation for Somaliland as part of the national development plan. There is also mini grid systems which Ministry of Energy and Minerals is currently preparing for urban areas as well as semi-urban areas. So I believe the ongoing initiatives can actually lead us to address the expensive energy that our people are currently facing. So I believe in the coming years the electricity costs will actually go down. I also believe that the electricity access and the affordability will increase in the upcoming years. And for your information, there was a big renewable energy project which our president inaugurated a few weeks back, invested by the private sector. So the government has to create the environment, the friendly environment, the conducive environment that can enable the private sector to invest the electricity sector and other sectors. And I can tell you that there are many important initiatives the government is currently doing to create that conducive business environment.
The energy is privately owned, which means it has no subsidy.
Let me tell you that based on our constitution, our country has adopted a free market system. So private sector has a role to play, and it is the government policy to promote the private sector, to create conducive environment for the private sector, to invest in the country. So it is not a problem that the private sector actually invests the electricity and the other sectors. But the private sector should be regulated by the government. And it is the role of the government, to actually make sure that the private sector are providing, services to the public with affordable and accessible, price. So the government is regulating. There is energy policy that has been, prepared. There is also, Electricity Act, which is also, under review now.
Going to do for other cities that made Berbera city to be among the best governed city in the 16 cities amongst East Africa? And what is your plan for other cities of the government? And what is the future of the government in developing Somaliland?
I think Berbera municipality has done a remarkable, job and, commendable job. And I should actually praise the mayor of Berbera of doing, all this for his own people. I think it's very simple. It is all about, having the right leadership, mobilizing, the domestic revenue, and also bringing that resources back to the public in terms of social services. So what Berbera municipality is doing is all about that. And we are expecting our municipalities to follow suit and, increase their tech space and also, invest that resources back to the social services. So the central government is actually encouraging that to happen, at the policy level. So I hope the other municipalities will learn from Berbera, and that, remarkable job that has been done in Berbera will be replicated in the other cities of Somaliland.
Thank you, Fena.
Thank you very much.
Okay.